was a very wobbly boy. Thanks for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Hannah Rossell.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to London, England. Woo!
Woo!
Published September 1933, Lord Edgware Dies is the 9th installment of the Hercule Poirot mystery series. A new murder has caught Poirot's attention, but the longer it takes him to solve it, the more people seem to die. With a large cast of characters and more twists than a soft pretzel, will Poirot be able to solve the murder before more innocent people die? So, we don't have a lot of historical context here. Usually I like to take a moment and be like, this is where Agatha Christie is in her life. This is how many publications have happened. It's 3 books in a row for Hercule. There's Peril at End House, then this one, Lord Edgware Dies, and Murder on Orient Express, one after the other.
Oh, wow.
So no other works coming out.
She was on that grind. She got a contract to follow or something.
I have no idea, but she's traveling and enjoying life, and I'm happy for her.
Nice.
Instead of fun facts about her, I guess we can do some fun facts about this book, because it has fun facts.
Ooh.
First of all, the beginning of the book says that Poirot considers this a failure.
I know. I was wondering why. I'm like, I wouldn't consider it a failure.
Yeah, because later, when Agatha Christie talks about how Poirot feels about his different cases, that actually says that Poirot likes this case.
That's what I thought.
Because of his great detective work.
Oh, maybe he had time to self-reflect and was like, oh, I actually don't hate this.
Actually, I was very clever of me.
My little gray cells worked so well.
Alternately, this book is also called 13 at Dinner, and it comes up in the book, which I didn't understand until I got the context. Apparently, Americans, specifically, I did not have this, have a superstition that sitting 13 to dinner is bad luck, and something bad will happen to the first person that gets up.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a point in the book where someone's like, oh my gosh, we sat 13 to dinner and I was the first one to get up. When in actuality, Poirot's like, actually, the first person to get up was...
Not you.
Yeah, not you. It was Jane. So that's why that's made a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that, but there you go. The character Carlotta Adams was based on a real American actress.
Oh, that's cool.
Her name is Ruth Draper, is not murdered. Can confirm.
Does not overdose.
Yeah, so she's a dramatist that could do really, really good impressions.
Huh, that name sounds so familiar. Don't know why.
I mean, she's a famous American actress.
Yeah.
You probably saw her in something or somebody said something.
Probably, yeah.
Taylor Swift's pulling out Clara Bow. I'm sure we could figure something out here.
Yeah, true.
In Chapter 7, Inspector Japp mentions the Elizabeth Canning case, which was a real kidnapping case.
Oh.
That did indeed happen in London in 1753. And so the reference was, oh, we have a suspect and people think she was in 2 places at once. And that's the reference to the case. So it was a kidnapping case. There was a maidservant that claimed to have been kidnapped and held for a month in a barn loft. And when she got out, she managed to escape. She indicated 2 people as her kidnappers, and one of them was Mary Squires. And she was found guilty originally, but upon further investigation, she had an alibi, and people that said she was there recanted. And so she got cleared of the charges, and Canning's, the woman that indicated her, actually ended up getting found guilty of perjury. And I think she had to spend like 6 months to a year in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was a whole thing. And so that is what is being referenced when Japp talks about that. And then the final fun fact we have is there's a point when Poirot mentions, oh, I had a case where someone didn't believe me because I said 4 feet instead of 4 millimeters. And that has everybody confused. Like, what the heck are you talking about? Well, it's a little bit of a continuity error because what actually ended up happening is Murder on the Links. Poirot is facing off against this other detective who's more Sherlock-esque, let's say, who looks over everything and is trying to find these little clues. And he looks over a larger clue, literally. Poirot mentions, hey, you're looking for things that are 2 milliliters, but this pipe is feet. Or I put 2 feet, which does not make sense because she was British. But, you know, it was bigger, 2 meters probably. And so that's what they're referencing there. And so it looks like Agatha got it wrong, where it's like, no, you said it was 2 feet versus 2 millimeters. So that's what the reference is. I had to go hunt for that.
Yeah.
Because everyone's confused, but that's what the reference is. So there we go. There's our fun historical facts, I guess, something or other, since we don't have any historical facts. This book had a lot of facts about it.
That was a lot about the book specifically, not just like what was happening in life.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big book for her career. It's critically accepted and stuff. I'm a little surprised it's not, I don't know, used more, not as popular.
Yeah.
The big ones, Murder of Roger Ackroyd, Murder on the Orient Express. So a little weird that it's not. To the point, I went to the bookstore because I was like, ooh, I like it. Cool, let me look for this book. And it wasn't there. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Lame, but okay. So for background on this, if you can't tell, I've never read this one before. This is new for me. Yay.
Yay. Like every other Poirot book, I've never read this one either.
She has so many books. Age level adults, because default. Content warning, there is racial stereotypes against Jewish people so randomly. What the heck, man? Why? What?
Yeah.
So random. Anyway, it was a racist time. And then we got some big racial slurs here. We have against the Romani people, which she's done a couple times. Against Chinese people, the bad one. And then you have a racial slur for black people.
I don't think my audiobook had any of those.
I would hope not, honestly.
One, I did not hear. And I feel like I would have been like, what, if I heard it?
Yeah, no, it was pretty shocking because it was just randomly when you first meet Ronald Marsh, who is the nephew of Lord Edgware. He's like, hey, I'm no blank.
Oh, I feel like I didn't hear that in the audiobook. That's a little shocking.
It's a little shocking.
Which is, probably a good thing.
Just a reminder, really, people were racist back in the day. Additionally, you have sexism, language, PG-13, drug abuse, graphic violence, murder, suicide mentioned. It turns out to be murder, but they talk about suicide a lot. Judge a book by its cover. I never know. I didn't really get anything. There's so many different type of covers, first of all.
My cover was just some person walking into a house, and I was like, okay, the murder happens in a house?
Yeah, mine was pretty boring, and so all I got was, that dude dies.
Fair enough.
That is what I know from this, is Lord Edgware dies, and then you meet him, and you're like, you're gonna die.
Yep.
That's what I get from this. 13 to dinner would have been more confusing, I think.
Yeah, I feel like if it had been 13 to dinner, I would have been like, is this happening at a dinner party instead of just some random reference?
Yeah, it probably would have been a little confusing because it's like, yeah, the dinner party is important as an alibi, but yeah.
Yeah, one of the other titles was 13 to dinner. I was like, oh, there must be some big thing about a dinner party.
Yeah.
It wasn't big enough, in my opinion, for it to be the title.
The main thing, yeah. So, yeah, that dude dies. That's all I knew going into this. Also, I feel it's very important. I don't know why, but 2 characters just don't get named. And it's a very important person. The Duke of Merton never gets a name.
He's just the Duke of Merton. It's just his title.
He's just his title, and then his mom is just the Duchess whatever.
I wonder if that's because how Jane saw them.
Dowager Duchess of Merton. Yeah, but Poirot meets both of these people.
That's true.
Which is a little interesting.
Maybe Agatha was just tired of naming people, which is valid.
Nope, you are just the Duke and the Duchess. Everyone else gets... I mean, Lord Edgware needed a name because there's 2 of them in the book, technically.
That dude dies.
That dude dies. So that makes sense, but yeah. So Poirot's just, seeing a bit of theater with his bestie. What are you doing there?
Are you ever in Argentina, Hastings?
No, except for the very end.
Are you and your wife beefing all the time and you're just constantly like, I'm going to England, I'm going to go see my bestie?
Dude, why did you move to Argentina? Just move back.
Yeah.
My goodness. Why do you always leave your wife there by herself?
Yeah, like, what's going on with your wife? I like her more than you.
That's facts. But, Agatha, do you regret doing that? What? Anyway, whatever list, do you remember in the very beginning when we're like, we hate Hastings, what is he going to be in? Every book, that list lied.
Yeah.
He is always there. And somehow I managed to read all of the books without Hastings before I realized that Hastings was a character. It's a whole thing. Oh, well.
That's funny.
They go to the theater. They see this impressionist named Carlotta. And she does an impression of this other famous actress, Jane Wilkinson. Well, wouldn't you know it? Jane Wilkinson's there. And actually, she finds it pretty funny. Yay?
Yay! Only because it wasn't making fun of her.
Well, you come to find out, you realize she likes it because she can use that to her advantage. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then, as Poirot does, he gets introduced to all of them and their friends. And at one point, Poirot points out that Jane is self-absorbed in a way that puts her in danger. And I was like, should this book be Lady Jane Dies? Because she is Lady Edgware. She is married to Lord Edgware, who is apparently a creep. I don't know. He enjoys having the women that rely on him in the state of fear randomly. He enjoys that.
Sounds like he's abusive.
He is very. To his first wife, this is his second wife, and then to his daughter as well.
Had Lady Edgware not just heard of old reliable Aqua Tofana? Just poison him.
No, it had to be a production. No, spoiler alert, Jane does it. But Jane's like, hey, Poirot, I need your help. I have a problem and you solve problems. And immediately I was like, he's a murder detective, ma'am. What are you doing?
Yeah, right? I need you to solve this problem, but it's not murder. It's just trivial, my divorce.
I just want you to go talk to my husband and have him say, hey, yeah, you can totally do the thing. You can totally get divorced, because she wants to get divorced so she can marry Duke of Merton. One, he's not abusive, and two, he's richer.
Yeah. It's so funny how Poirot's like, oh, this very desirable Duke. And then when you see them, Hastings is thoroughly unimpressed with him.
I'm not surprised. Hastings is probably a little
jealous.
He is an unreliable narrator. Every woman is beautiful, except for, actually, now that I think about it, most of the ones in this book he doesn't particularly think are beautiful. But a lot of times, all the women are beautiful, and all the men are either extremely charming and he wants to be like them, usually the suspects, or terrible and unimpressive.
Yeah, it cracked me up at one point when Poirot was like, oh, there's this Auburn girl. Hastings, she would have pulled at your heartstrings or something along those lines.
Yes. First of all, yes, I think it was a redhead too.
It was definitely Auburn. I just don't remember what Poirot said.
I noticed something at the very beginning of the book which confused me. And then I got to the end of the book and I was like, oh, I saw it coming, I guess. She wants to marry the Duke of Merton, but apparently he is staunchly, hugely, deeply Anglo-Catholic. And I remember reading that line and turning to my husband and I'm like, if someone were to describe themselves as Anglo-Catholic, how would that be different than a normal Catholic? Because, you usually have Russian Catholicism. It would be a little bit different than what you would think of your Italian Catholics.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, this is a time, obviously, very past Henry VIII. But I immediately thought, he can't marry you. You're a divorcee.
Yeah, that's a no-no.
That's a huge no-no. He can't marry someone whose husband is still alive because divorce isn't a thing.
Yeah.
So I was confused this entire book, thinking, what are you talking about? You can't marry him. Why is he in love with you? You have a husband. And so I looked at him and I was like, is Anglo-Catholic specifically like oh, no, you can get divorced because, Henry VIII, and we want to win the English people's favor, and we've kind of lost the battle with divorce, and so Anglo-Catholic, you can get divorced? I don't know. I was very confused. And then you get to the end of the book and you find out that Jane had to murder her husband instead of just getting a divorce because he can't marry a divorcee. And I was like, ha-ha! Vindication!
There's a nice little drop of foreshadowing that if you weren't familiar with that religion, you'd be like, okay, why do I care?
I was so confused. Also, in the very beginning, Brian, her friend Brian Martin, seems really bitter.
Oh my gosh, so bitter.
And I was like, so she dumped you for the Duke, didn't she? Immediately, I saw that one coming. Yes.
Yeah, he screamed jealous.
So jealous. It was almost a little funny. So Hercule does it. He agrees to go talk to Lord Edgware, agrees to ask him to consider a divorce. Poirot's not really sure what he's going to say, but he's just kind of like, where is this going?
He's like, I normally deal with dead people.
This seems weird, and I like weird things. So he goes to talk to him, whatever. And Lord Edgware is immediately like, yeah, she can have her divorce.
I sent a letter to her 6 months ago.
Yeah, I sent her a letter in America 6 months ago that she can have a divorce. I don't care. And Poirot's stumped, and we're all stumped, because she made a big deal about, oh, I've used so many different lawyers, this, that, and the other thing. I can't get him to do whatever. And Poirot's just like, why was I sent here if that's a thing? And so he goes and reports back to her, and she's like, oh, I mean, I never got the letter. And so Poirot's immediately like, okay.
That's suspicious.
So either one of you is lying or someone is hiding your mail. But who would benefit from them being stayed married?
Literally no one.
No one. It's very strange. Well, anyway, oh, by the way, I need to say this because the one thing about Agatha Christie things is there's so many little details, and some of the little details are little details, and then some of them
are really important.
Make all the difference in the world, because he was supposed to see Lord Edgware the next day, but instead the secretary says, hey, he's actually going to Paris tomorrow. You can come right now. And that screws up the murderer's plans completely. We've already revealed it's Jane.
Yeah.
It completely throws off Jane, because Poirot's not supposed to know that he agreed to the divorce. Because if he's agreed to the divorce, what is she doing?
Yeah.
What is happening? Why does she care? Why is Poirot involved? Just get your divorce. You're good.
Why is she so stressed about it?
Yeah, that's really important. Anyway, Poirot's confused. Hastings confused. Lady Edgware claims to be confused, but very happy. Although she meets them in a negligee, and I was just like,
yeah, girl.
You're being rude.
That's so uncomfy for everyone except you, probably, because you're self-absorbed.
Yeah, it was just a little character piece there, and I was just like, girl, you're being rude.
I think it showed who she is as a person, for sure.
Oh, no, how self-absorbed she is. Just like, I do not care if I make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm the only one that matters here.
Yep. So yeah, Poirot goes on his merry way until next day. Hey, Jap.
This dude you just talked to is dead.
And suddenly Hastings hates Jap?
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? Why are we beefing with Jap all of a sudden? I thought Jap was our friend.
All of a sudden, Jap does too much, and both praises Poirot too much and too little at the same time. No matter what Jap does, he annoys Hastings.
I think Hastings is just projecting.
A little bit. We are 9 books in, Hastings, and you are in most of them, and Jap is in almost all of them.
And he's the better character, but that's besides the point.
It was just so random that Hastings was like, ugh, everything he does annoys me. Okay.
Like, what a teenage girl thing to do.
But yeah, hey, guess what? This dude got murdered. He was stabbed in the neck in a very, very specific, almost surgical place. Oh, but it's all in the bag. Don't need you. Obviously, it's Lady Edgware because the butler and the secretary said it was Lady Edgware.
And she announced herself and did it in the way Brian said she would do it. That's almost too easy. It's almost too simple of a solution.
Yeah, she's even said, I'll just get in a taxi and go murder him. And that seems to be what happened.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened.
Except Poirot thinks something sus about this, which there is, but there's not at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you do reach the point, is this suspicious or is she stupid?
It's definitely the first one. I think she's smarter than everyone gives her credit for. She's self-absorbed, yes.
She's very intelligent for this.
Smart when it comes to benefiting herself.
The murder weapon is missing, but it's something like a pen knife, which is a very, very small knife, the size of a pen, you could say.
Shocking.
Jap is like, well, I haven't got this in the bag, whatever. And Poirot's like, I think something weird's gonna come up.
My spidey senses are tingling.
Yeah, and turns out Jap didn't show up because he wanted help. He showed up to ask Poirot as a witness because he heard Poirot was summoned there, and so Jap thought that Lord Edgware called him to be like...
Had some drama.
To be like, hey, I'm suspicious that someone's after me, because, you know, that happens to Poirot all the time. So he's supposed to be there as a witness and not as the detective, which is a fun little twist. But Poirot points out in the newspaper, because, Poirot loves his newspapers, Jane is said to have gone to a dinner party.
Yeah.
And Jap doesn't believe it. He's like, oh, those things are written before society writers, this, that, and the other thing. They're tipped off. And Poirot, just being Poirot, instead of telling Jap why he went to see Lord Edgware, is like, hey, we should call Brian Martin. He should come on over.
Yeah, because Poirot all of a sudden is like, I have to respect my client's privacy.
Only when it suits him.
Yeah.
He is a neutral good character. Well, I mean, he's pretty chaotic as a person, honestly. Oh, he's such a chaotic little gremlin. I love him.
But he also really likes his order.
He does. Which I guess technically makes him a lawful good because he follows his own code. Whoa, we would have to sit down and think about it.
That's a thought exercise for not right now.
So Poirot convinces Brian Martin to be honest about it. And so Brian is shocked that Edgware agreed to the divorce. And he specifically says, oh, he got shot. Because he heard, he's been murdered. And so he's like, oh, he was shot. And they're like, actually, he was stabbed. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But he says that Jane didn't go to the dinner party.
Yeah, because her head was hurting.
Because her head was hurting. Well, Poirot convinces Jap to let him come along to interview Jane, because the first time Jap went by, she fainted. And so agrees to let him go because, of course, Jap's going to let Poirot do whatever the heck he wants. He is gold. Even though I hate that both Jap and Hastings at several times are like, Poirot, you're at the end. You're getting old.
You're getting old. Why are we doubting him now? He solved every case that you two dummies couldn't.
If he was young, they would just be like, oh, you're too young. They're just looking for an excuse because they don't get the genius.
Yeah. Also, Hastings was so sick of the little gray cells this book.
Oh my gosh, he only says it once or twice. But he was like, if he says it one more time.
It's so funny.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Mainly because every time Poirot says it, it's usually as a dig to Hastings. So totally fine, totally understand that. Hates Jap. But Jane explains, no, I did go. I decided instead that I should go. And so I went.
Because Ellis told you to stop skipping out on stuff because people would start disliking you.
Yeah, you can't just last minute all the time. So she was like, okay, fine, I'll go. And so she ends up going, well, you can't be at two places at once. What does this mean? So they put Jane away as a suspect. They're like, okay, what the heck is going on? So also, Jane... I don't know if she's just overacting or if she really cares this little, but yeah, she's just like, oh, I gotta play the part of a widow. Does this hat make me look good?
I think she just was so over it.
I did the thing.
She was very self-absorbed, very shallow.
It's a whole thing. Oh, the one thing I did notice is that she had to order black clothing because she hates the color black. What is with our villains and hating wearing black?
At this point, it's like, if they hate black, I'm like, oh, they did the murder.
I mean, third time's the charm on that one. Yeah, but back to back.
Was there some anti-black clothing movement going on?
I don't know. It just made it part of their personality so they could trick others. Exact same thing, actually, to wear black to confuse people into thinking they're someone else. Wow. It's repackaged in a way that works really well. Because last book, it was wearing black to pretend to look like the victim, where this book is pretend to look like herself. So it's repackaged. It's a little different, but yeah, well, okay, we got a little bit of a trope here.
A Christieism.
Yeah. So goes to the house and come to find out, first of all, the butler doesn't know Jane from Adam, claims, oh, I saw her in the newspapers.
And also they're sus of the butler. There's something off about him.
He looks like a Greek god.
But also is effeminate in some way. I was like, this is a weird description.
And also Brian Martin Hastings also called him a Greek god.
I was like, oh, is Brian the butler?
Yeah, that's why, because it's like, oh, he barely got there and then he disappears. And I was just like, are Jane and Brian in on this somehow? I don't even know how that mind bend would work.
Agatha would pull it off.
No, that's not what happens. He's just this random dude, and actually, he's not a great dude. He has some shady connections and does shady stuff.
He's honestly just sort of, I don't know if this is the correct use of it, but like a red herring of a character.
He is a red herring. That is the correct terminology there.
Thank you.
He is used to make you go, maybe it's this, when it's not this. So just forget about the butler. He's not that important, honestly.
Other than the fact that he's pretty, but also vaguely unsettling.
and skedaddles, and Jap is like, well, crap.
That's nothing important.
More importantly, you have Carol, who is the secretary of Lord Edgware, and apparently the only woman in his life that
wasn't scared of him. He didn't bully.
Yeah, I think it was he didn't bully because she could leave.
Yeah.
And I think Carol was very aware of that fact.
Oh, yeah. She'd be like, I'll leave. I'll quit.
I'll go right now. I'll get somewhere else without you. But she's the one, she was like, I'm on the second floor. I looked down and I saw her face. And then Hastings and Poirot, reenact. And Hastings is stupid and is like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And then Poirot and Jap walk by. They come back and Hastings is like, yeah, I saw you. And he's like, did you see the rose I had in my mouth? And Hastings is like, why would you do that? And Poirot's like, haha, you can't see my face.
Hastings is just shocked.
Hastings is like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. When you're this easily impressed, man.
Poirot really just keeps Hastings around because he strokes his ego.
Probably. But yeah, there's a thing of like, oh, there's 2 keys. It doesn't really come up.
There's actually 3, but one's missing. Just sort of, I wonder who has it.
The new Lord Edgware, Ronald, is like, actually, it's fine.
I have it.
I have it.
It's in my pants pocket.
I found it. It's good. We're good. They confront her about that, not being able to see, obviously, because they just experimented. But she digs her heels in, gets defensive, and is like, I saw her, and if I didn't see her face, it's by the way she walked. And what's funny is Agatha Christie's really good at taking what her readers expect and twisting it so that the solution is hidden. And what she's doing right here is what she does in literally every book ever is, oh, look, unreliable witness is unreliable.
But it's actually correct.
But she's right. She's unreliable and probably would have had confirmation bias, but she's right. But because she's an unreliable witness at this point, and Poirot's pointing that out, we're like, oh, unreliable witness. Must have been someone else.
Yep.
So at this point, Poirot's like, oh, Carlotta's involved. She can imitate Jane perfectly. And so he's like, oh, Carlotta came to the house. And she did it. And maybe she didn't murder him, but maybe she did. I don't know. There's also a weird phone call.
Oh, yeah.
Jane goes to that dinner party. Jane gets a phone call, and they're like, is Lady Edgware there? And then the dude goes gets her, and she's like, yes, this is Lady Edgware. And then the other person hangs up.
Weird. Early prank calling.
The society papers wanted to get it right. I don't know.
They had to make sure they had their sources correct.
So that's one of the 5 questions that Poirot has at about the middle. He lists a bunch of questions, actually similar to last book, where he had a list of stuff. Huh.
Yeah, hey, the method works.
That's what she gets for writing these back to back. But he has these 5 questions, he thinks about it, and then he gets involved in the investigation more, and he forgets about them, and then he has to circle back. So once again, it's not like a lazy recopy, it's just repackaged a little bit. But at this point, he realizes if she is not the murderer, then she's an accessory to murder, and he's like, holy crap, she's in danger. I was like, ooh.
And then we remember at the beginning where I was like, but she is in danger because she would do anything for money. And it's like, well, talk about foreshadowing.
Which is when they were like, oh, she's Jewish. You'd never know by looking at her, but she's so greedy. It was just so unnecessary, guys. But the time period, not that it was right, but I'm not surprised.
It was a prevalent view, unfortunately.
So finds her apartment, gets there, but finds out that she passed away in her sleep.
Suspicious.
From an overdose of some sort of medication that makes you sleepy.
Yeah, Veronal.
Everyone thinks she has a drug problem. And then she has this gold box with her initial CA written
in rubies.
Says from Paris, November, whatever the last year was, and then from D. And so Poirot gets distracted by that.
It served its purpose, which was to distract.
Well, yeah, she did a good job there. So there is a whole side plot about, does she take drugs? Doesn't she take drugs? Oh, well, this waitress saw her sitting at a table by herself looking at it. So clearly she had it then, but her housekeeper has never seen it before. What's up with this box? And we'll get there, I promise.
We will circle back to that.
We'll put a pin in it. Perot finds a pair of pince-nez, which I was wondering why so many characters up to this point had that specific style of glasses, because she's had them in other books like once or twice, but there are like 3 different characters with pince-nez, and it was just, okay, now it makes sense. But I immediately thought Carol. He immediately thought Carol. We're all by biased against Carol here, but it turns out
not her prescription.
He does a really clever switcheroo where he takes the glasses and switches it with hers, and then immediately Carol's like, oh,
these are not mine.
I can't see through them. And so you immediately know, well, those aren't Carol's glasses, because if they were, she wouldn't have noticed the switch because the prescription would have been correct.
Yep.
That was very good. I was very impressed there.
That was very good thinking on his part.
Come to find out that Ellis, the maid, those are hers, which is even more confusing.
Yeah, I also, for the longest time, the narrator of my book, I thought he was saying Alice instead of Ellis.
Ellis.
Yeah, but the way, I guess, the accent was done, it sounded like Alice.
I could see that.
And so she was just Alice in my mind until I read your notes and I was like, oh, Ellis.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I do physical books, is so I actually know how to spell the name. Also, there's this whole plot point with a hat maker.
Oh, yeah, and who I guess Brian is in love with now, and they're gonna get married.
And Jenny's not gonna let him run away for nothing. Okay.
More power to you, girl.
Probably the bigger red herring. Martin and her are probably the bigger red herring. To the point, at the end of the book, when you're like, oh my gosh, we're gathering all of the suspects. He gathers Brian and Jenny.
Yeah, I don't know. I never thought she was a suspect. I was just sort of like, she was Carlotta's friend.
I don't know. There was some stuff that was sus between Brian and her. And Poirot points it out.
I mean, definitely sus, but it was never to me. I was like, I don't think she's the murderer.
Yeah.
But definitely a little strange, odd.
But there's your connection between Carlotta and Brian.
Yeah.
Right there, they had a lot of
Didn't Carlotta that knew Brian when she was a child?
Yes. Carlotta knew him as a child and then was like, oh, but I don't really know him now.
Yeah, we knew each other when we were younger, but fell out of contact, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and so Brian is good friends with Jane.
Unrequited love a little bit.
And Carlotta's good friends with Jenny, and so clearly we have an overlap here. But talking about other red herrings real quick, the Duke is also a red herring.
Oh, yeah.
He was in Paris where the murder happened. What is his actual name? George Marsh is Lord Edgware, the whatever number before Ronald.
Who was on a date with Carlotta at the start of the book.
I don't know if it was a date as much as it was, I mean, it might be a date, honestly, you come to find out.
It was something, yeah.
Might have some feelings for him, might be getting soft on him or something. But the point is, the Duke keeps being pointed out of like, oh, maybe he did the thing. Maybe he is the murderer in the background because he wanted to marry this woman. But you can meet him, you meet his mom, and you're like, he's kind of a wuss.
Yeah. I kind of felt like he was just sucked in by Jane's
nonsense.
Yeah.
Without realizing it's Jane's nonsense.
Yeah.
I was shocked to find out he actually was in love with her.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was going to be one of Jane's, oh, he doesn't love me, but he'll love me soon things.
Yeah, she's convinced that he's in love with her even though he's not.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting to happen.
Shock and surprise, Poirot reads a love letter upside down, which Hastings once again is like, you can't do that. And Poirot's like, no, I physically can do that. And I can confirm reading upside down is a very useful skill, especially in, like high school when you're sharing a book with the person behind you. It's fine, I'll read it upside down, it's good. But he reads it and it actually is a love letter. They're actually in love. Well, he's in love. I think that was the biggest plot twist of this whole book.
It was kind of shocking.
Was not expecting. So he's kind of a red herring. Jenny's a red herring.
Lots of red herrings.
Yes, a lot of characters. But the dinner party's not that important. It's mentioned a lot because it's Jane's alibi and it's important to the mystery solution, but I feel like we can skip just like all of it.
Yeah.
The important thing, like I said, is gave her an alibi. Jap. Okay, so here's one of the examples of Jap. I don't understand it because Hastings in the beginning is like, oh, he's too complimentary. And then we get to this point in the book and Poirot has a theory, or at least thinks things are weird, and Jap doesn't think they're weird. Jap specifically says, I've more experience than you have. Poirot is a retired police officer who now does it for fun. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Jap, let's have some perspective here, my guy.
Even if you don't count what he does now, he was a police officer. What are you doing? What are you saying?
Yeah.
Shut up. This is the point where Hastings is like, oh, maybe his mental faculties are going. And it's, guys.
Hastings, your mental faculties faculties have left the building.
His mental faculties never were.
True.
Oh, well, another red herring. We have Geraldine, who is the daughter, who is not a fan of her father, just like immediately is like, he sucked. The secretary is like, you can't say that. He's dead. And she's like, he sucked.
Yeah, she has a whole mental breakdown, starts cracking up, and it's like, are you good?
No. And she seems sweet on her cousin. We have to remember this is back in the day when you married your cousin.
Yeah.
She's sweet on her cousin. Carlotta seems sweet on him. So you're like, oh, well, Ronald now benefits because he was out of money. Gone, nothing there. And he even asked for money earlier and he was turned down. And then, oh, wouldn't you know it? His uncle gets murdered. And so he inherits everything, which I find a little confusing. I'm a little surprised that he didn't disinherit Ronald when he threw him on the streets.
Yeah, but maybe he just didn't want his
dynasty to end.
Yeah, I don't know who else would
become Lord Edgware.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he hated his daughter that much. He was like, nope, we're going to keep this degenerate.
How long do you think it'll take him to spend that whole fortune?
2 seconds. He's also obnoxious.
Honestly.
He's the guy that says the N-word.
That tells you all you need to know about him.
So he is another red herring. Let's just point out all the red herrings because we already know who did it.
There's so many.
So there's so many connections and so many possibilities at this point. And you're just like, I don't know who could do it. Oh, there's a moment, fun fact, switching from red herrings to fun facts. There's a point where the Duchess, the Duke of Merton's mom, mentions, hey, I know I can talk to you, Poirot, because you helped Lady Yardley. I was told by Lady Yardley that you can help me, and I don't know if you remember, but she was in a short story adventure of the Western Star, where, you know, the whole, oh my gosh, I have this necklace, it's the Western Star, and there's this Eastern Star, but there's not, it's the same necklace, and we're just all trying to pretend that it got stolen. So that story. So continuity, there is some. I do appreciate how much she tries with continuity, even if she gets it a little off.
Yeah, the attempt was made.
The attempt was made is very good. So there went the fun fact. But we're at the point now where we're like, okay, we have all this information. We have no idea what's going on. There are things that incriminate Ronald. He had an alibi of going to the opera, but oh my gosh, his cousin was there too, and they actually left for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I guess it was during intermission.
I guess, but it's just like no one noticed. You're with a party. Ronald's on a date.
Yeah, and you're just like, hey, hold up, I gotta go talk to my cousin for 30 minutes.
And no one noticed.
It seemed like he was not into the girl, though.
No, and I don't remember who she was there with. But, okay, that beside, that is not a life experience I have ever had, so I can't really comment too much on it. But they went to the house, and they were there, and taxi driver says they both went into the house at different points. Oh, is it Ronald? Is it her? But is it Brian? Is it Jenny? Is it Carol? Carol wouldn't really benefit. She gets like 500 pounds in the will. So, I mean, Carol's not much of a suspect.
No.
Especially after you're like, oh, not your glasses. So what ends up happening, and what is foreshadowed in the very beginning of the book, is Poirot hears two people in the street talking about a movie they just saw where Brian Martin was in it. And then they mentioned, oh, well, if they had involved Ellis from the beginning, who I'm guessing is the director of the movie. That's kind of where I was taking it. I don't really know. That could be a real director. I did not check that. I checked a bunch of other stuff, but I did not check that. So the name Ellis gets mentioned, and I guess Poirot remembers that Ellis is the name of
the maid. Yeah.
The maid of Jane, who has pince nez, and so goes, it is hers. And so I was confused at this point.
Yeah, I was confused long before this. You held on longer than I did.
It's just, I had a lot of theories, and none of them had Ellis in it, and then I didn't understand so much. And so what ends up happening, gets Jap there, he's like, hey, I've solved the case, you know, and you have Brian Martin and Jenny there, and Poirot is so mad that Brian lied to him.
Literally, I was like, Poirot, vindictive. It was kind of funny, though.
It was.
He was like, I'm just going to make you suffer and have a slight panic attack just because I'm mad at you, which, I mean, go off, my petty king.
It's nuts. So, in front of a police officer, oh my goodness, I love this man. He's so chaos. Brian's story is false. He came to Poirot early in the book saying, hey, I'm being followed by a man with a gold tooth, but otherwise he changes his appearance and, oh, it involves this lady and I'm going to need to go get her permission before I can go tell you about it. And it's false. Doesn't exist. Poirot thinks he probably got it out of a movie.
Yeah.
What does it say to an actor when you're like, you are so uncreative, you picked an out-of-date movie to take the plot from?
Yeah, no one young would get a gold tooth. Keep up with the trends, bro.
That never would have come to me because there are still people who get gold teeth.
Yeah.
So that never tipped me off that, oh, no one in this day and age would get a gold tooth. They have other fillings. I don't know my dental history.
I don't either. It made me think of the guy from Home Alone.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, of course, Poirot. How dare I ever think otherwise? So he insisted that the divorce wouldn't go through because Poirot isn't supposed to see George until the day after he's murdered, and basically implying that Brian was misleading them the whole time in front of a police officer. He's having his detective moment in front of his... I can't. So he lays it out as if Brian is the murderer, and Brian gets so upset. He gets pale, he's flustered, and this, that, and the other thing. And so he's just like, and you're the murderer. That's what you get for lying to me. I know you weren't, but I was gonna not let you slip in front of a police officer.
That'll teach you to lie, Brian.
This man, he embodies chaos.
He does.
Oh my goodness. So there's this letter that she wrote to her sister saying, hey, I'm gonna win a bet and I'm gonna impersonate Jane, and if I do, I get $10,000.
She would do anything for money.
Poirot is like, this is weird, and points out that one of the pages is ripped, and you know how sometimes they'll do maps? They did actually print out the letter so you could see what it looked like.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I could envision that pretty easily.
Yeah, I like it because that's a chance for the audience to solve something.
Yeah, that is cool.
Because the way it's specifically ripped, first of all, Poirot was like, why did the murderer rip this instead of cutting it? They must have been really delayed. And then he realizes, but what if they had to cut it? What if it was a situation where they had to tear it in a weird way? And because if you tear it in a certain way, it looks like Ronald Marsh is being implicated in this. The reason it had to be teared is because there was the word she in it. But if you teared it a certain way, it would say he, and it would read like it's Robert Marsh.
And there's also a whole page missing from the letter?
Yeah, I have a little questions about that.
Which honestly kind of made no sense about me. I was like, what would they talk about? It made sense.
Something about Ronald Marsh and then switching into, oh, by the way, I met Jane Wilkinson. Probably.
Yeah.
Shock and surprise what really happens. Carlotta went to the dinner party, and Jane murdered her husband.
We should have listened to Brian.
That was pretty good. Brian was like, I knew it! I knew it was her. Which is just great. Although Poirot points out he's pretty vindictive.
Yeah.
Because Jane was supposed to marry him, but actually she found a wealthier dude, so peace. I guess, well, no, they wouldn't need to keep going in circles because Brian is a movie star and Jane has been doing stage acting. Why are you still friends? Why are you still hanging out? Why are you devoting this much of your energy to this woman? But that's beside the point. Poirot has taught him the ills of his ways, lying and hanging out with your ex-girlfriend. So Carlotta went to the dinner party and she was just trying to trick a bunch of people at dinner, not her husband, because they were like, I mean, she's good, but your husband's gonna know who you are. He knows you.
Yeah, and her husband wasn't there either.
Yeah, and so that was the thing. Poirot thought she was pretending to be Jane to go see Lord Edgware.
Yeah.
But she was just going to the dinner party. And so that's what the phone call was Jane making sure that she wasn't being found out. Since she wasn't, she was able to go to the house and murder her husband in the most obvious way possible, but somehow manages to make it the most suspicious thing possible at the same time. So after doing that, she went to the restaurant. She's who the waitress saw with the gold box.
And checking their watch the whole time.
And she had it made, and Ellis went and got the box from Paris, I guess. It had the letter D, so it'd be harder to whatever. Honestly, she set up a pretty good deal here for Poirot, because she specifically brought Poirot in to be like, hey, you're involved, you know me. is fine. Part of the plot, but it dupes her at the end anyway because she did this. Because of course Poirot's going to figure it out. So she's the one who killed Lord Edgware. And also this other dude named Ross was at the dinner table and noticed that, oh, when I was at one dinner party with you, you could talk about Greek poetry and philosophy and this, that, and the other thing. And then I go to another dinner party with you and you confuse Paris, the character of Greek mythology, Prince of Troy, with the city Paris.
And then he's like, oh, that's weird. He gets killed for that.
Yeah, and he gets killed for that because he figured it out on the phone with Poirot. He puts it down. He's like, oh, I'm about to tell you something important. Oh, I hear someone at the door.
Yeah, as soon as there like a minute passed by and I was like, oh, he's dead. He gone.
He did. So also killed him with the same knife, which, by the way, to also make him look suspicious, Ronald mentions, oh, it was a penknife. And you're like, how do you know he was stabbed with a penknife? That's very specific.
Yeah.
And so to make him look suspicious, we'll come to find out it wasn't a penknife. It was her maid's corn knife used to cut corns off her feet. That is disgusting.
Ugh.
I mean, it's a murder weapon, so I mean, there's worse things than getting infected here.
I don't know. The thought of that is just... Ugh.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, yeah, Jane did it. And we get to know a lot about why she did it because she writes Poirot a letter.
And she sounded unhinged the entire time.
I sent it to fellow co-star and licensed therapist, Caitlin.
Oh my gosh, yes. Please tell me what she thought. I was listening to this and I was like, how many diagnoses can you get from this letter? My little brain was like, oh, I need to know.
And I asked her because I was like, my layman mind would either be you're a sociopath or a narcissist.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I don't think she's a sociopath because she clearly cares about people, if only herself. So because she cares about herself, she's not a sociopath.
Yeah.
And so she said, I'm leaning narcissist, but there are certain things in here which makes me think not narcissist and maybe just terrible person without mental disorders.
Yeah.
And she didn't read the book or anything. I just sent her the letter, the screenshot, and I was like, hey, this woman murdered her husband. If you have any questions, let me know. What do you think? And then that's what she thought. She noticed narcissistic traits, but obviously she would need more to diagnose that. But she also said there were certain things that made her think it was not narcissism.
Yeah.
Diagnosable narcissism and not just, colloquial term.
Yeah. Narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes. So full-blown actual diagnosis. Yeah. Hastings pulls I got pulled back to Argentina, so I couldn't see the trial, but...
Because your wife wanted to see you after you've been gone for months?
I have no idea. He's just like, I got pulled back to Argentina.
Don't you have a farm, Hastings?
He has a cattle ranch.
Who's running that for you?
His wife. Anyway, that's beside the point. So, yeah, she did it. She gets put in jail. She's going to get hung for it. There you go. There's the book.
It was a good book.
Yeah. General thoughts. So, the thing I like about it, and I'll mention more when we talk about favorite of the series so far, but the thing I really like about it that a lot of her other books don't have is the building suspension of multiple people getting murdered.
Yeah, and then she continued that with Murder on the Nile.
Yes. Up to this point, a lot of the time there's a murder, somehow Poirot gets involved, maybe he's involved before, maybe he's involved after, but Poirot gets involved, and one murder, one investigation, a bunch of other crimes maybe, but most likely it's just one murder and he solves it. But this one, yeah, it had that building suspension, and it's not completely true with the second murder because that happened before Poirot even really got involved with this. But it's the third murder, you notice that it's like, oh no, this murderer is going to keep murdering unless we solve this.
Yeah, they're doing this to cover their tracks.
So that's kind of a new vibe that I got.
Yeah, and that definitely continued into Murder on the Nile.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I really enjoyed about it because it felt like the investigation was important, not just because, oh, this is an interesting investigation. I'm glad Poirot's here to put the murderer behind bars, but it was just like, if he doesn't solve it, people will die.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that building suspense.
It definitely upped the ante.
Yes. as we went along and to keep you engaged while reading.
And like for Carlotta's, you sort of, you're like, okay, it's just the two. And then Ross is gone from the phone and you're like, oh no.
This is just going to keep happening.
They're going to keep going. Do you think she would have made it all the way to America to kill Carlotta's sister?
No clue.
If left to her devices.
Who else would figure this out? Yeah. So I have two questions. One's a little on the nose because Jane's very specific about how she learned how to do it. And I was just like, Agatha, you learned a new fact, didn't you? How did you specifically learn the place to stab? Were you talking to a doctor and they were like, this is the thing? And you were like, oh my gosh, I have to put it in the book.
Yeah.
Because that's what Jane does. She learns from an American doctor. Oh, this is a thing. And she's like, oh, teach me how to do it so I can use it for a play or a movie.
Yeah.
It was such a specific, I was like, is that what you did? But my second one, more seriously, I would love to ask her on a Ouija board, does she regret making Hastings move?
Yeah, because he comes back a lot.
He comes back a lot and with very little provocation. And it was so rash and quickly that in the second book,
he's just gone.
He finds this girl, marries her, and moves to Argentina.
Yeah.
That's so dramatic.
And very sudden.
And she just keeps bringing him back. And so I'm just like, do you regret doing that? Do you wish you had just not done that? And so Hastings can be about himself whenever he wants. I don't know. I would be fascinated to learn that.
Yeah. Why did you keep bringing him back?
Yeah.
My question was like, how they mentioned the real life case? Was this book specifically sort of inspired by that case? Or are other books in the past or present, future from this book, not present, that'd be creepy, inspired by like real life cases? Because I'm like, there's only so many murders a mind can come up with that don't just start repeating themselves.
Of all the authors, this author might disagree. She has a lot of murders.
All right, then follow-up question. Are you okay?
Are you okay? Probably.
Why do we have so many murders in our brain?
It's like the phenomena where it's people that do a lot of really wholesome. They're very wholesome creators are miserable in real life. And people who make the, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you horror are the most chill, wholesome people you have ever met. Happy, kind, nice. It is just a complete opposite.
Yeah, that's very true. I just wonder if she took inspiration from real life cases. Because we know she'll see people in normal life.
Yes.
And be like, you're going to inspire a character. Which if she heard of that kidnapping case, she's like, oh, that's a fun idea. Let me just include this in the book.
I know she's done it on a couple of books. I can't say if it's this book specifically in all my fun facts. I feel like if it was, I would have written it down. But I know there are some times where she gets inspired by real life cases.
I mean, that would make sense.
You are a crime writer, of course.
Yeah.
Read again. Yes.
Yes.
I need to buy it. I need to source it, apparently, because my bookstore does not have it.
Thrift Books probably has it, but I would absolutely read this again.
Very good. Is good. Is enjoy. Much like.
For sure.
Favorite of the series so far. So this is where I'm like, it might be this one. Because I just really enjoyed that building suspense. Is the one thing it has on Roger Ackroyd, I think, is the building suspense.
Yeah, I see that.
We'll see how I feel as time goes on, but having just, and granted, I'm the person, my favorite Legend of Zelda game is whatever I played last, so there might be a little bit of that in there, but we'll see as time goes on how I feel it, maybe put it through a reread or two.
Yeah, for sure.
But it might be this one.
Yeah, it's a tough call for me between this one and Roger Ackroyd as well. I just really like that Roger Ackroyd was written from the perspective of the murderer.
Yeah, that's very clever.
Which I think honestly puts it above this one for me.
I was curious because you ended up giving it 4 stars.
Yeah.
So what about it was a 4-star instead of a 5-star for you?
There's some point in the middle where there's just so much information and so much happening that I just got lost.
That's fair. There is a lot.
It just felt like too much was going on.
Yeah, too much to keep track of. It's not very streamlined for sure.
Yeah, and it's fun, when she would throw in, like in some other books, where she throws in twists and turns here and there. There's information for you to weed through.
That's a fair criticism.
I feel like this went beyond simple.
It's a lot.
With some twist to a little unnecessarily complex.
It's a lot. There's a lot of people. I tried to keep the synopsis as short as I could because it's a lot.
Yeah, the solution was simple, but there's just so many red herrings thrown in that I was like,
This is a lot.
yeah, it's just too much at some points. But still really good. I would absolutely read it again. Did we do our ratings?
No. Haha. I'd give it a gripping performance out of 10.
Oh, that's a good one.
It had me from beginning to end, which not all the books do that. There's definitely some times where it's like chapters are more like, we're catching up Hastings, or we're doing this other random thing or something or other. But this one had me from beginning to end. I read it pretty quickly. I think I read it in less than a week.
Yeah, I think I listened to it in like 4 days.
And not so much in the I need to get to the ending of the solution because this is driving me mad. I was really enjoying the process of it.
Yeah, I never felt like at one point where I was like, ugh, I don't want to finish this.
I have so many chapters till we get there.
Yeah, it kept me hooked, but there was just points where I was like, this is too much going on. My rating was an egg-shaped head out of 10 because I feel like the amount of times his egg-shaped head is mentioned is a lot.
Every book, at least once.
But also in this book, I feel like his head shape came up. Or maybe that was just me being like, why do we always talk about his head being shaped like an egg? And so then in my brain, when I'm listening to it, he just becomes Humpty Dumpty. The whole man is an egg.
But have you read this book? What is Hastings doing in England this time? We're not even given a reason. We stopped trying.
Being a menace to our reading experience.
Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring Lord Edgware Dies with us. Join us next time when we'll be covering Wires and Nerves and Gone Rogue by Marissa Meyer. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Hannah Rossell.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape With Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.